Welcome to Retirement Mentorship. I'm your host, Freeman Lindy, certified financial planner. What if the experts disagree? I've got a number of questions lately from different clients and other people I've met about, hey, what about this, or this person says the opposite of what you're saying, or I heard on the news this, or I read this book that claimed that, and it's different than what you say. So, they're experts, you're an expert. How do we make sense of when experts disagree? Who's right? Who do we trust? So I just want to address all of those. None of those are probably big enough in to do a whole podcast on, but I've gathered together a bunch of those types of questions and basically just around the idea of what happens when the experts disagree. So there's a number of reasons that can cause this, and so we're just going to rattle through some of the things that I've kind of thought through. Number one would be you got to look at the conflicts of interest that this expert might have. Right? Why might they be recommending this strategy or product or whatever else? What do they have to gain if they're right or if they're wrong, or if you do or don't do what they're telling you to do? Right? So for the biggest one that we always bring up, right, is that pretty much the only people that recommend annuities and permanent life insurance are people that sell them. Right, so there's a lot of financial experts out there that say that if you're in retirement or approaching retirement, you should have annuities to guarantee some income and keep money out of the scary, risky market. And if you're younger or even if you're old, whatever, like at all times are a great time to own whole life insurance or universal life insurance, other permanent life insurance products. Right, or long-term care, these types of things. And you'll have financial experts that recommend that everyone or most everyone get these products. And then you have people like me, also a expert, if you want to call me that, who say, no, almost no one should have these things. So who's right? And again, that's where we go to the conflicts of interest of people who recommend these things get paid a lot of money to sell them. They get paid massive commissions when people agree and sign up for these products. And people who don't get paid to recommend them or not recommend them don't. And it's not just me, right? If you go look at any personal finance blogger, any personal finance expert, any of these, almost all of them who don't sell insurance products don't recommend them. Right? All the most popular personal finance books out there by people who don't sell the products don't recommend them. So what does that tell you? It tells you which experts in this scenario you should be listening to and which ones you should ignore. So look at the conflicts of interest. That'd be the first thing I would say when you're determining which expert to pay attention to. Another thing I've run across a bunch, or several people actually brought this up, is you could have like imbalances of examples, we'll call it, where they will say, hey, you should do this because these people do this, or this institution does this, right? So for example, they say, well, Warren Buffett does this, so you should too. He's an expert, and so you should do whatever Warren Buffett does. And there are definitely some things that Warren Buffett does that we can all do. But the difference between what a billionaire does with their money or what we as regular everyday Americans do with ours, we got to admit there's going to be some differences. Right? There's a big difference between what you choose to do with your money when you've got millions or billions extra and you're trying to make a little bit more on those extra millions or those extra billions that you have versus the person that's just trying to make sure they have enough money to pay their bills and have a little bit of enjoyment in retirement. Right? Those are two different things. Saving for survival versus saving for world domination. And so while there are principles that Warren Buffett does that we can all emulate and all do the exact way that he invests as multi-generational, just leave it all in there. Some of those kind of things don't always apply to us. Right? Or they say, these institutions do this and they have billions of dollars, so you should do it too. Right? Like a common one would be like the infinite banking scheme, where they say, well, banks do this all the time, and so you can be your own banker by doing these same things. But again, what a bank does with its money, where people just give it money and then they lend it here and they pay interest there and they make a spread on the difference there and they charge fees and all that, are completely different from what we as individuals do with our money. Right? People don't just walk up and hand us money and then we put it here and pay interest there. We don't do that. So what institutions, what banks, what trust funds, what pension plans, all those things, what they do with their money that they're in charge of, they're just different than what we're going to do with ours. So you can just ignore, for the most part, those examples. A third option would be just differences of opinion, right? This is going to come into play sometimes where there are experts that disagree on what you should do going forward. And a lot of that's just going to be no one knows the future, right? There are no facts about the future. And so what I might say someone should do going forward might be different than another financial advisor that I might respect a lot, what they're going to tell you to do. So for example, like I generally don't recommend investing in international equity funds. There's a lot of people that I really respect that would say that you should. That's a difference of opinion, right? I don't believe that international investing is going to do as well in the future because it has not in the past. And some other people would say, well, it hasn't in the past, so now it's set to do well in the future. There are no facts about the future. We won't know which of us are right until we get there. So it's a difference of opinion. Right? Same thing with like real estate investing versus equity investing. We can both look at things in the past and have our opinions about what's going to happen in the future. And sometimes those are just going to come down to differences of opinion. And that's fine. So there's going to be some of that. Another big one will be like variation of audience. Right? Like who are the experts talking to? And I think the biggest thing comes when you have an expert that's talking to a wide, broad audience versus your fiduciary fee-only financial planner you're talking to you directly, right? Because, to say, take things like paying off debt, right? Dave Ramsey says that, pay off all your debt and then never get debt again. And that's really good advice for the general public when you're talking to everyone. And yet we might say, hey, even though you can in retirement buy this car in cash, we are better off financing it for this, that, and this reasons, right? Which is completely different than someone who's buying a car they can't afford with money they don't have to impress people they don't really like. And so, but the message that you're going to tell to a general audience is way different because you don't know their exact situation and their exact circumstances, right? Or, and this one's come up a lot recently, like I will frequently, not always, but frequently have my clients take Social Security right away when they retire. Like right when they retire, or if they retire at 60, take it right away at 62. At least one of them. And there are a lot of experts, right? And then, so I've had a few people say, well, you say to take it now, but I've read this, and this. And it seems like everything else says to wait all the way until age 70, or at least till full retirement age, and to never claim early. So why are all these experts saying this, and you're saying that I should take it early? And again, if you're reading a public blog post or a public news article or a public book that's been published on that can be read by anyone. And don't quote me on this. I don't know what the exact stats are, but I feel like I've read things like 40% of Americans over age 60 have nothing saved for retirement. Like, literally nothing. And I should have pulled the actual figures, but it's things like that, right? So there's a wide number of people that don't have anything saved, don't have an IRA, don't have a Roth, don't have all these things. And so for them, their only income in retirement is going to be Social Security. And so if you were going to err on work longer, take it later, have a bigger income stream, or telling people publicly to take it earlier, right? If you were going to take a stance versus just saying it depends, which one would you do if you were an expert? Tell people to take it earlier where they might not then run out because they don't have enough because it's all they have, or tell them to take it later and keep them working and get that to be as big as you possibly can make it. If it were me, right, if I was just saying that, hey, most people should probably wait, right? But you individually, with everything else that you have going on, should take it. Or even when you read something that says, well, even if you have an IRA and all these other things, you should still wait. And again, that depends. If the rest of your money is in fixed annuities and bonds and fixed income and cash and all these things, then the rate of increase of your Social Security may be better than your investment accounts. In which case, you're better off draining your investment accounts and letting Social Security build than the other way around. But if you follow our model and our strategy, you are reasonably better off doing the opposite. And instead of draining your accounts waiting for Social Security, to augment your accounts with your Social Security and for tax reasons and all these other things. That's why for not all of them, it does still depend, but for a lot of clients, we have them take it earlier instead of delaying it. So the variation of audience is going to determine is your expert talking to everyone or you specifically, right? And because when you're talking to everyone, you need to go to the lowest common denominator, right? Whatever the dumbest person in your audience is going to think, that's what you need to play to, right? It's kind of like in our industry, we have errors and omissions insurance. And when I was with the broker dealer and everything back in the day and under the insurance umbrella and all that, my errors and omission insurance that I had to pay was 8 times what it is now as a fee-only fiduciary. Because the number of numbskulls that work in that industry that would make mistakes and have claims against them were so much, right? They had to price that to capture the lowest common denominator, the dumbest financial advisor that's out there, and what they're likely to do and recommend and cheat and do all these other things. And so they have to price it to account for that. And even though I'm not going to do any of those things, I still have to pay the premium that's going to address that. But when you're in the fee-only fiduciary world, people don't do that. And so there are no claims, or virtually no claims, and so they can price it literally an eighth of what I was paying before. And so there's a big difference when you're talking to a group or an individual. And so you're going to see those differences in opinions of experts. And then the last thing I would say would be differences in goals, right? What are we actually trying to achieve? Because some people, when you're listening to experts, whatever, their main goal might be for you to maximize your wealth, for example. Or it may be to protect your wealth and make sure that you don't have any variation in it. Or it may be to enjoy life and get the most out of life. Whatever that main overarching goal is, the advice is going to be different for those people. And, I have some of the things that I believe and teach publicly, but then also individually for each person, it's going to matter what is that ultimate goal, right? And some things sound really good on paper, right? We did a whole episode on Die with Zero, on that concept, on the book that was written on it, which I really like a lot of the concepts in that book about, not just waiting and passing away with tons of money, but enjoying it along the way. But one of the things that he talks about often in there is getting an annuity. And if you put all your money in annuities, then, it pays out an income for life and you can never outlive it, and you can actually die with zero. And dying with zero sounds, it's catchy, it's powerful, like it grabs you on the book. Die with zero, it's a powerful phrase, but that's not really the goal, is it? The real goal behind the catchy phrase is to maximize your life and maximize the enjoyment of your money. And you can do that without an annuity. You can do that better with an annuity, and you can do as much as you can with an annuity and then not die with zero. Still die with something and still have maximized your life, right? You can get both. You can have your cake and eat it too, which is why I don't recommend an annuity. And so if your true goal, your actual goal was to die with zero, then buying an annuity would be a good way to do that. But I think most people's true goal is to enjoy retirement, enjoy life, and still have something left over. And so there are better ways to do that than buying an annuity, right? Or there's another book, The Power of Zero, How to Get into the 0% Tax Bracket and Transform Retirement, something like that, right? David McKnight. And it talks about how you can pay no taxes in retirement and to do all these things and use, and talks a lot about, using permanent life insurance and some of the other things as a fancy way to do that. And again, if your real goal is to pay nothing in taxes in retirement, then that might be a good way to do that. He's an expert and he's a CPA. He's got some credentials, right? And he says, hey, if you want to get into the 0% tax bracket and pay no taxes in retirement, here's some good ways to do that. But again, I don't think that's the real goal. I think the real goal is not to pay the least amount of taxes. The goal is to have the most amount of money after taxes. Right? We could always put all your money in cash and you would earn no interest, you'd earn no dividends, you would have no appreciation, and you would pay less in taxes. You'd also have way less money, right? We could pay a ton of taxes now and have all your money in Roth and permanent life insurance and pay nothing in all of retirement, but you wouldn't actually pay the least amount of taxes over your lifetime, and you wouldn't have the most amount of money in the end for the same amount of spending. So if that's the goal, is just to pay zero tax in retirement, then what he recommends as an expert will achieve that. But that's not the real goal, is it? The real goal is to have the most amount of money and the most amount of life after taxes. And that's where my advice can differ from other experts, because we have different goals. And so part of my job, right, is to help challenge people's goals, to make them more concrete, to hey, what's the goal behind the goal sometimes? And sometimes people have goals just because they've heard it's a good idea. And then when we dig deeper, we find out what their true goals are. And then we build an exclusive plan for them to help them achieve their individual goals as a single person or household, not as a broad audience. And we do that with minimal conflicts of interest, right? My conflict of interest is that you have to pay me, but you know exactly what you're paying me and you know exactly what you're getting. I'm not paid to sell extra products. I don't, this podcast is mostly for my clients, reinforcing what we already talk about. Some of you else are listening in, even though you're not clients. And so this is sort of a broad audience, right? But the actual advice comes on the individual level. That's why we say at the end, right? don't take advice from people who don't know you or your situation. Because how would we know all these things if we didn't know that? So rather than taking advice at the lowest common denominator, take it at your situation to support your goals. Hopefully that's helpful in just explaining some of the reasons why all of us experts tend to disagree. And we'll see you next week. Cheers. If you enjoyed that, you would love being part of our free membership community. It's called Retire Membership, and it has a host of benefits all for free. For example, you can always buy my book, 3D Retirement Income, on Amazon. But if you join us at Retire Membership, we will send you either a hard copy or paperback for free, provide the ebook and the audiobook so that you can listen to it if you don't have time to read it. In addition to that, we'll also provide you with a bunch of content that you can't get anywhere else. For example, we have our quarterly Retire Mentorship magazine, which comes out quarterly and has no ads whatsoever. It's just timely content to help you stay the course. We also have workbooks for our free online workshop to help you get the most out of those, flowcharts to help you make better decisions, and a weekly email to provide timely content that you can unsubscribe from at any time. We never ask for any payment information, and we never share your information with anyone else. We just want to provide timely content and help you stay the course to retire successfully and stay successfully retired. There's no reason to wait, so join us now at retiremembership.com, where you can click in the link in the description and it'll go right there. We can't wait to see you in the community. Cheers. This podcast is educational only and is not investment, tax, or legal advice.